As I walk down the street, seems everyone I meet gives me a friendly hello. I guess I'm just a lucky so-and-so.
Back in the 1960s, when the chicken in a basket circuit was all the rage, the owners of Batley Variety Club managed to persuade the legendary jazz trumpeter Louis Armstrong to come and play in a 2-week residency at Batley. He arrived here at Leeds Bradford Airport and was greeted by a 7-year-old jazz trumpeter from Leeds named Enrico Tomasa, and was then driven to Batley by chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce.
As I walk down the street, seems everyone I meet gives me a friendly hello. I guess I'm just a lucky so-and-so.
I watched the aircraft come and taxi onto the apron here, and he came to a stop on stand 6.
Yes.
And this little genuine gentleman got off and watched a little lad play a trumpet.
You can remember Enrico, the little boy who come to play for him?
I couldn't have told you his name, but I remember the laddie very well, yeah. He just a bit having his little glass golden trumpets, and he played this thing for Louis Armstrong, and thought it was magic.
He must have been one of the first international celebrities to land at Leeds Bradford.
Yes, I'm sure he would have been, certainly of that era, of that sort of dimension anyway.
What were you doing at the time?
I was handling baggage at the time, or freight as it was literally, but...
it's highly likely that you'll have handled Louis Armstrong's baggage down.
Likely, yeah, more than likely would have been around in the, either taking it off or putting it on, yes.
We're standing almost in exactly the place where he landed, aren't we?
Where it happened, yeah.
And there's an old New Orleans song called I Walk on Gilded Splinters, so I can always say I've walked in the gilded footsteps of Louis Armstrong.
That's right, indeed, yeah.
And you can always say that you loaded his baggage.
You're right.
Enrico, his father was called Ernie Tommaso, and they used to go out in cabaret, and it was Ernie Tommaso and friends. And in that was Enrico, who I think was about 7 or 8 at that time. So, and I knew Ernie Tommaso and everybody in advance. So it was an idea we put through to them. And of course, when Louis came down the steps at the airport and little Enrico played the trumpet, you know, you could tell he was genuinely, really overjoyed with it.
Mm. But there was all these cameras around and great security. In fact, my elder brother was supposed to be playing the accordion because he's a piano player, so he could play a little bit of accordion, so we could have accompaniment to what we played. But they wouldn't allow them to bring the accordion in for security reasons, because I think in them days they didn't have the screening facilities. So it just ended up my father and I on clarinet and trumpet, and but we had permission to go onto the tarmac, and for that I remember the plane coming in and waiting, and here he is and all these cameras around. Dad says, right, here he is, son, come on. And we played Basin Street Blues for him.
You played Basin Street Blues?
Yeah, that initial number that I ever heard him play. And as he walked down the steps, he listened, he heard the sound and looked around and saw me. And I mean, Louis loved kids. He never had any kids of his own, but he loved kids, and all the kids in his neighbourhood he used to try to encourage to listen to music and everything. And once he saw me playing, he just took a shine to it.
Now, the backwater of Batley may seem like an unlikely destination for the legendary Louis Armstrong, but in the 1960s, international stars flocked here to the Variety Club, a little bit of Las Vegas in Yorkshire. The club's owner, James Corrigan, a fairman's son, had this dream of providing world-class entertainment.
We've got 65,000 members, and all the members, if we have Shirley Bassey, which is on New Year's Eve for a week, we couldn't get all our members in that particular week. What we've got to do now is to get these stars not for 1 week, but for 3 weeks or even a month.
We gave people value for money. It's like opening a supermarket here and only charging a penny a tuppence instead of, you know, on top for profits. We give people value for money that people got really. I mean, people weren't earning fortunes in those days. It was only 5 shillings to go in. That's 25 pence now to see The Bachelors, Corrigan,
Shirley Bassey.
No, a little bit more Shirley Bassey. It was a while before we got there, but not much more. I don't think we charged more than £152 to see Shirley Bassey.
And then one day he said, I would like Louis Armstrong. And I thought, well, it must be a bit crackers here, but there we are. So I pursued it, and I found out who his manager was in New York. Made quite a few telephone calls, faxes, and what have you. And then ultimately, well, his name was Joe Glazer. Ultimately, Joe wanted to sort of see details of the club and so forth. So that's why eventually James and myself went over there to see him.
What did you do? Did you take photographs?
Oh, yeah,
of the club?
and all the details, yeah.
And was he an hard businessman?
Well, it was really, but you see, you're talking about a superstar in Louis Armstrong all those years ago. I mean, and it so happened that we got him when, what was it, Wonderful World. I think that was #1 in the hit parade,
Yes.
which of course was even better still.
Yes.
So Joe had to be very particular that these people from Batley that he had never heard of. See, this is the problem I had, that we were talking about a place called Batley that people hadn't heard of. And of course in the early stages I was talking about stars coming to Batley when the place wasn't even built. So that was the problem to get over. But this Louis Armstrong thing, obviously the word got or drifted to America that here was a terrific cabaret club in a place called Batley. So that's how it started.
He was offered Louis Armstrong and he took him on a 2-week contract. He picked him up from the airport, drove him into Batley, and at that time it was an old mill, but it was a reporter's office for Batley Reporter. And Jay drove him in the car park and said, this is Batley Variety Club. His face were picture. Then he started laughing, put him back in the car and brought him 200 yards down the road to Batley.
So Louis Armstrong thought he'd come all the way from America to play in a derelict old mill.
Yeah. Lovely story.
Well, I played Leeds 3 or 4 times in my life since 1932. But I never heard this place. It evidently it wasn't here in those early years. But all I got to say about Batley, it's a living aspirin.
Living aspirin?
Yeah, great. All the people out there, when I went back to take my bow, they hold their hand out so I can give them some skin, you know. Mop, you know. We don't shake hands, we just hit each other's hand wide open. And that's the good deal.
I always remember him. I picked him up in the Rolls Royce at outside the Queen's Hotel, and there were some children outside wanted his autograph, and he sat down on the steps. And with him sitting down and 1 or 2 people gathering round, other people came up for his autograph. They realised who he was. And he got quite a, I wouldn't say a crowd, but quite a few people waiting to let him sign anything. And his manager says, you know, come on, Louis, we want to get back to the club. And he said, man, he says, leave me alone. He says, these are my people. Yeah. I always remember, he was, you know, he was not a person that wanted, you don't touch me or don't see me or anything like that. He was a nice man, charming person.
But the story doesn't end there, because the little boy who played to Louis Armstrong all those years ago in Batley went on to become one of Britain's premier trumpet players, playing in jazz clubs all over the world. And it's the reason I've come to London on a very rainy day to see him play at the 100 Club here in Oxford Street. Well, let's take the story on now from the airport to the 2-week residency at Batley Variety Club. Did you see any of the concerts?
Well, yes, I was invited down by Louis every night. He wanted to see me in his dressing room every night before the gig started. He says, come and see me. He says, don't bring your horn. He says, not bothered about you don't come and play. Come, relax and learn, listen and learn. And I was welcomed every night to come in and see him in the dressing room, and he'd ask me how I'm doing. And he took that time before every concert. And then I was taken up to the special box at the top, and I was his guest for every night of the week at Batley, yeah.
And did you manage to keep in touch with him after he went back to America?
I did, very much. He said, you must write to me, you must keep in touch. And I wrote letters to him, my father did, and we made tapes of how I was playing with the family, little musical tapes, and sent him them. And he used to write back and say how he's delighted to get them, and we sent him photos of us, and he said, oh, we've got them framed, and I'm going to frame them and put them on a wall.
What is it about jazz, Enrico? What is it that appeals to you? I'd been brought up on the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, but when I first heard, I think it was West End blues, and that screaming sound that you get on West End blues, and I've never heard anything like it in my life.
Well, that's right. When West End Blues came out in the 30s, I think it was early 30s, I can't remember, all the musicians of the day just heard that intro. And everyone, wow, listen to that, you know, just the trumpet on its own. You know, nothing like that had been heard before, you know.
That's the sound that made me decide never to be a trumpet player. And of course the story comes full circle, because when you embark on your working career, you decide to be a full-time jazz musician.
Well, from the moment I heard that first Louis Armstrong record, I wanted to be a professional trumpet player, and I've never wavered from that since. And I think meeting Louis really solidified that idea and that determination. And touch wood, I'm earning a living, playing the trumpet, playing jazz, so life's not so bad.